In many stories, whether they come from mythology, religion, or modern fiction, there is the figure of the chosen one. A person chosen for a great purpose, a task that is bigger than themselves, often with a mission to save, lead, or inspire. The chosen one is admired by others, seen as strong, resilient, and determined. They are often the one others look up to, believing that no matter the challenge, they will rise to meet it because of their extraordinary abilities or their divine calling. Their strength, resolve, and sense of purpose make them appear unshakable, and they are often celebrated for the courage they display in the face of adversity. The chosen one is viewed as a hero, a beacon of hope and inspiration, someone who is destined to bring about change and overcome whatever obstacles stand in their way. However, the journey of the chosen one is rarely as simple as it seems.
For all the strength and heroism they exhibit, there are moments in their journey when everything they've worked for seems to fall apart. It is in these moments that their true vulnerability and fear emerge. The very qualities that others admire, their strength, their unwavering faith, and their resilience, are tested in the most profound ways. The chosen one may face a time when their mission crumbles before their eyes, when they are confronted with failure so overwhelming that it threatens to unravel everything they've worked toward. In these moments, they are forced to confront their deepest fears, doubts, and insecurities. And the question arises, what happens when even the most resolute individual is confronted with failure? When everything crumbles, the chosen one is left with nothing but their own doubts and fears. The very foundation of their mission seems to disintegrate, and they find themselves questioning not just their ability to continue, but also their identity and worth. For the chosen one, this is a critical turning point, a moment of despair where they must come to terms with the possibility that everything they have sacrificed, everything they have fought for, may have been in vain. It's in these moments of failure, when they are stripped of their role as a hero and forced to confront their own human limitations, that the true test of their character begins. This brings us to the key question. What happens when the chosen one faces failure? What happens when everything they have worked so hard to achieve falls apart? How do they rise from the rubble of their own disillusionment and despair? These are the moments that shape the chosen one, moments when they are forced to reconcile their mission with their humanity.
It is not the victories that define them, but the struggles and losses they face, and how they rebuild themselves after everything seems to fall apart. If this topic resonates with you, be sure to like this video, share it with others who might find it meaningful, and subscribe to the channel to dive into more thought-provoking discussions like this one. Let's explore what happens when everything falls apart for the chosen one, and how they navigate the darkest moments of their journey. The concept of the chosen one often revolves around an individual selected to undertake a mission of great significance. This mission may range from saving an entire people, leading a nation, or achieving something monumental that only they can accomplish. But with this high calling comes a weighty responsibility that can prove to be more burdensome than anyone may anticipate. The chosen one is tasked with more than just personal growth or success. They are called upon to carry the hopes and expectations of others, the dreams and desires of their community, their people, and sometimes even the entire world. The pressure is immense, as they are often viewed as the savior or the solution to the problems that others cannot solve. Their decisions shape the future, and their actions hold the power to either fulfill or completely shatter the expectations placed upon them. The weight of this responsibility can be overwhelming. The chosen one becomes the focal point of the hopes of many, and their mission takes on a collective significance. However, the burden that comes with being the chosen one is not something that can easily be shared. They may have advisors, followers, or companions, but the ultimate responsibility, whether to succeed or fail, rests squarely on their shoulders. Every choice they make has repercussions that ripple outward, affecting not only themselves but the lives of countless others. The chosen one cannot afford to make mistakes, and the fear of failing to live up to the expectations placed upon them can be paralyzing. Each decision feels monumental, and each failure feels catastrophic. The responsibility is often a lonely one. Even though the chosen one may have a support system, there is a level of isolation that comes with being chosen for such a significant mission. No one can truly understand the magnitude of the burden they bear. The chosen one may have friends, family, or followers who stand by them,
but at the end of the day, the responsibility is theirs alone. The weight of the mission can lead to a sense of loneliness, as the chosen one is separated from others by the enormity of their task. They can never fully share their burdens, their fears, or their doubts, because no one else has been called to bear the same weight. Even in a crowd, the chosen one can feel isolated, as they walk a path that is theirs alone to follow. This isolation is not simply emotional, it is psychological as well. The chosen one is constantly aware of the high stakes involved in their mission. Every failure, every misstep is magnified, because the consequences of their actions extend far beyond themselves. They are not only representing themselves, but they are carrying the hopes of a community, a people, or even a larger cause. The pressure can become suffocating, as the chosen one is forced to carry the weight of expectations that others may not even fully comprehend. The fear of failure becomes more than just personal. It becomes a fear that they will fail the people who have placed their trust in them. The emotional cost of this responsibility is immense. When you are the chosen one, your sense of self-worth is often tied to your ability to succeed in your mission. If you fail, you not only let yourself down, but the very people who have placed their faith in you. The fear of disappointing those who rely on you can be overwhelming, and the consequences of failure can feel devastating. The chosen one must learn to navigate these fears, to compartmentalize the weight of their responsibility, and to push forward despite the overwhelming emotional and psychological pressure. One of the most prominent examples of how the weight of responsibility leads to feelings of doubt and eventual failure can be seen in the story of Moses. Moses was called by God to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, a mission that would shape the course of history and lay the foundation for the future of the Jewish people. The responsibility placed on Moses was enormous. Not only did he have to confront Pharaoh, the most powerful ruler of his time, but he also had to guide a group of people who were often ungrateful, disobedient, and doubtful. He was tasked with not only liberating them from slavery, but also leading them through the wilderness to the Promised Land, a journey that would take 40 years and involve numerous challenges. Moses' journey was marked by profound self-doubt and internal conflict. He was not the natural choice to lead such a monumental mission. In fact, when God first called him to lead the Israelites, Moses tried to resist, questioning his ability to do the job. He doubted his own qualifications, his speech, and his leadership abilities. In Exodus 4:10, Moses even says to God, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." Moses did not see himself as the right person for the job, and his lack of confidence became a barrier between him and the mission he was called to fulfill. Even after God reassured him, Moses was still plagued by feelings of inadequacy. He was constantly questioning whether he was truly capable of carrying out such a massive responsibility. As Moses began his leadership, the weight of the task only grew heavier. The Israelites, despite witnessing God's miracles, often rebelled against Moses and complained about their circumstances. This constant disobedience and lack of faith from the very people he was trying to help took a tremendous emotional toll on Moses. He was not just leading them out of Egypt, he was also struggling to instill in them the faith and trust in God that they would need to survive the journey. There were moments when Moses was so overwhelmed by the weight of his responsibility that he even considered abandoning the mission altogether. He became so frustrated with the Israelites that he asked God to relieve him of the task. In Numbers 11:14-15, Moses said, "I cannot carry all these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me. If this is how you are going to treat me, please go ahead and kill me. If I have found favor in your eyes, and if this is the way you are going to treat me, put me to death right now." Moses' feelings of failure and self-doubt are a powerful example of the emotional and psychological toll that the weight of responsibility can have on the chosen one. He was torn between his desire to fulfill God's command and the overwhelming pressure of the responsibility placed on his shoulders. The expectations placed upon him were so great that he sometimes felt like he couldn't continue. Despite his immense faith and devotion, Moses struggled with his own limitations, and his feelings of inadequacy led to moments of despair and frustration. Moses' journey also highlights how the chosen one's responsibility often leads to feelings of isolation. He was surrounded by thousands of people, yet he felt utterly alone in his leadership. His role as the mediator between God and the Israelites created a deep divide between him and the people he was called to lead. He couldn't share the burden of his mission with anyone else, and this isolation only intensified the emotional and psychological strain of his task. Moses was caught between his own feelings of inadequacy and the unyielding expectations of his people. The weight of this responsibility drove him to moments of despair and self-doubt that were hard to overcome. In the end, Moses did fulfill his mission. He led the Israelites out of Egypt and toward the Promised Land, though he himself was not allowed to enter it. His journey was not without profound moments of failure, doubt, and struggle, but it also demonstrated the resilience required to bear the immense weight of responsibility. Moses' experience serves as a powerful reminder that being the chosen one is not about constant triumph. It is about navigating the heavy weight of responsibility, facing moments of despair, and continuing to move forward despite the emotional, psychological, and spiritual challenges along the way. The weight of the chosen one's responsibility is often far greater than anyone realizes. The burden of their mission can lead to moments of doubt, frustration, and isolation. But it is also through these struggles that the chosen one is shaped. Their journey is not defined by the absence of struggle, but by their ability to persevere in the face of it. The emotional and psychological toll of carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders is immense, and it is only through this struggle that they can ultimately fulfill their purpose. As we move from discussing the immense responsibility and isolation faced by the chosen one, we now explore a critical aspect of their journey: the illusion of control. When individuals are chosen for great missions, they often carry a sense of purpose and destiny that seems to place them in control of their future. They may believe that their efforts, their actions, and their decisions can shape the course of events and bring about the outcome they hope for. The weight of responsibility can convince the chosen one that they can control the outcome of their mission, that with determination and resolve, they can guide events according to their will. However, as the journey unfolds, the reality often sets in that much of what happens is beyond their control. This realization can be a painful and humbling experience for the chosen one. The very sense of empowerment that comes with being chosen is often met with the harsh truth that not everything can be managed or dictated. No matter how hard they strive, how much they sacrifice, or how many obstacles they overcome, there are forces at play that are far beyond their reach. These forces might be external, such as the actions of others, changing circumstances, or the nature of the world itself. Or they might be internal, such as their own doubts, fears, or weaknesses. When things begin to spiral out of control, the chosen one may experience a deep sense of helplessness. This can be particularly difficult because, for much of their journey, they have been told they are the key to saving others or achieving something extraordinary. When everything falls apart, they are forced to confront the fact that their control over their destiny is an illusion, and this can shake them to their core. As the chosen one begins to realize that they cannot control everything, a crisis of faith may occur. They may wonder if they have been mistaken in their belief that they could shape the outcome of their mission. The doubts that arise are not just about their ability to control the external world, but also about their own role in the larger narrative. If they cannot control the circumstances, if their efforts are failing, what is the purpose of their mission? This loss of control can lead to feelings of powerlessness and even despair, as the chosen one is forced to reckon with the reality that they may not be able to fulfill their destiny as they imagined it. One of the most powerful examples of the chosen one confronting the illusion of control comes from the life of Jesus Christ, especially in the moments leading to his crucifixion. Throughout his ministry, Jesus demonstrated incredible faith and confidence in his purpose. He knew the mission that lay ahead, and he was determined to fulfill it, even though he knew it would require great sacrifice. However, as he approached the end of his journey, particularly in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus was forced to confront the brutal truth that no matter how hard he prayed, no matter how desperately he sought a different path, the crucifixion was inevitable. The night before his crucifixion, Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. In this private, solitary moment, he was faced with an overwhelming sense of the impending suffering that awaited him. The weight of the mission he had carried for his entire life now became excruciatingly real. The illusion of control that he had once felt began to crumble. Despite his prayers for the cup of suffering to be taken away, despite his plea for there to be another way, he realized that the path before him was unavoidable. The fate of his mission was sealed, and he could not change it. He was no longer in control of the events unfolding around him. The reality of his situation was that he had to surrender, not to the forces of the world that sought to destroy him, but to the will of God, which had led him to this point. In the garden, Jesus' words revealed the depth of his inner struggle. He said, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22:42. These words were not just a surrender to God's will. They were an acceptance of the fact that, despite his efforts and his fervent prayers, he could not change the course of events. The path to the cross was inevitable, and no amount of human will or desire could alter the fact that his mission required this sacrifice. Jesus had to relinquish control over the outcome and submit to a destiny he had known would come, but which he had hoped to avoid. The emotional toll of this realization was profound. Jesus, who had been the guiding light for so many, who had performed miracles and shown unwavering faith in God's purpose for him, was now facing the reality of his own powerlessness in the face of his mission. The fear, the doubt, and the sorrow he experienced were the natural reactions of any human being confronted with such an inescapable fate. The very nature of his calling, his identity as the chosen one, was now leading him towards suffering and death, and he could do nothing to change that. The helplessness he felt in that moment must have been overwhelming, as he realized that the only way forward was through the suffering and sacrifice that awaited him. Jesus' experience in the Garden of Gethsemane underscores the profound internal conflict faced by the chosen one when they are confronted with the illusion of control. Up until that moment, Jesus had exercised great authority over his ministry. He had performed miracles, healed the sick, and preached a message of hope. He had built a following, and he had a clear sense of his mission. But in the garden, he was forced to acknowledge that despite all his power, his ability to control the unfolding events was limited. The realization that he could not change his fate must have been an emotional and spiritual crisis. Yet it was also a moment of profound surrender. For the chosen one, this surrender is not a sign of weakness, but a moment of profound strength. It is a recognition that, while they may have been chosen for a great purpose, they are still human. They cannot control everything. The realization that they are not in control of the outcome can be both devastating and liberating. It is devastating because it confronts them with their own limitations, but it is also liberating because it allows them to let go of the pressure to control every aspect of their destiny. It is a moment of deep humility, where they acknowledge that they are a part of something greater than themselves, and that their mission is not about their own power or success, but about fulfilling a higher purpose. This surrender, this acknowledgement of the illusion of control, is a pivotal moment in the journey of the chosen one. It is the moment when they accept that some things are beyond their control, and that their faith, trust, and commitment to the mission are more important than their need for personal control. Jesus' experience in the Garden of Gethsemane is a powerful example of how the chosen one must confront this reality and, in doing so, find peace in surrendering to the path that has been laid out for them. The illusion of control is something that every chosen one must grapple with. It is a reminder that no matter how much they believe they can shape their destiny, there are forces at play, whether external or internal, that are beyond their grasp. The challenge is not to control everything, but to find strength in accepting what they cannot change, and to continue forward, even when they are faced with the uncertainty and unpredictability of their mission. For the chosen one, the true test is not how much control they can exert, but how they respond when control slips away, and they must rely on faith, trust, and resilience to move forward. As we transition from the realization that the chosen one's path is often marked by the illusion of control, we now arrive at one of the most pivotal moments in their journey, the moment of crisis. This is the moment when everything seems to fall apart, when the mission that once appeared so clear and achievable becomes threatened by unforeseen forces. Whether it is a personal failure, a betrayal, or an unexpected tragedy, the moment of crisis forces the chosen one to confront the harsh reality that their efforts may have been in vain. It is in this moment of crisis that their true character is tested, and they must grapple with their deepest fears and self-doubt. The once unwavering belief in their mission is now shaken, and they are left questioning whether they can continue or whether they have failed. In the face of such a crisis, the chosen one is forced to confront the disillusionment that comes when their purpose and efforts seem to unravel before their eyes. The idealistic vision they had for their mission, one where they would lead, inspire, or save, begins to crumble, and the reality of their limitations becomes undeniable. This is a moment of profound emotional and spiritual turmoil. The chosen one has always been seen as the figure who could overcome any obstacle, who could bring about change and fulfillment. But now, with everything in jeopardy, they are confronted with their own vulnerability. They must ask themselves, have I failed? Is everything I've worked for truly in vain? The weight of the crisis is often magnified by the fact that the chosen one cannot easily share this burden with anyone else. Their role as a leader, a savior, or a figure of hope has set them apart, creating a sense of isolation. In this moment of crisis, they find themselves utterly alone, faced with the reality that they are the only ones who can make sense of their turmoil. The responsibility to overcome the crisis falls on their shoulders, and they must figure out how to proceed, even when every step forward feels uncertain and fraught with doubt. One of the most significant aspects of the moment of crisis is that it forces the chosen one to question their identity. The very essence of who they are becomes intertwined with their mission. If the mission fails, does that mean they have failed as well? Are they still the chosen one if they cannot fulfill the task they were assigned? The personal and emotional cost of such a moment of doubt is often profound, as the chosen one faces the possibility that everything they believed about their purpose and calling may have been mistaken. A powerful example of this moment of crisis can be found in the story of Moses and his leadership of the Israelites. Moses had been chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, a mission that would shape the course of history. However, as he led the Israelites through the wilderness, he encountered numerous challenges. The people were often ungrateful, rebellious, and distrustful of his leadership. Despite the miracles Moses had performed and the promises God had made, the Israelites repeatedly doubted his ability to lead them to the promised land. In moments of frustration, Moses faced deep self-doubt. His confidence in his mission was shaken by the constant complaints and rebellion from the people he had dedicated his life to guiding. One of the most significant moments of crisis for Moses came when the Israelites rebelled against him, questioning his leadership and turning back to their old ways. After witnessing God's miracles, they still refused to trust Moses, and in doing so, they tested his faith and resolve. In Numbers 14, after the people complained once again about their hardships, Moses fell to his knees, torn between his mission and the overwhelming frustration that came from being constantly challenged by the very people he was trying to save. He felt as though all of his efforts had been in vain. The people's disobedience and refusal to listen to him made Moses question whether his mission had any true purpose. This moment of doubt was deeply unsettling for Moses. He was the leader chosen by God, and yet the people were rejecting him at every turn. He had led them through trials, performed miracles, and brought them closer to the promised land. But now they were turning against him. Moses was forced to confront the terrifying possibility that everything he had worked for could fall apart. In his despair, he even questioned whether it would be better if God chose someone else to lead the Israelites. In Numbers 11:14-15, he said, "I cannot carry all these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me. If this is how you are going to treat me, please go ahead and kill me." This moment of crisis highlights the deep emotional cost of leadership and the immense pressure placed on the chosen one. Moses' crisis was not just about the failure of his mission, but also about the failure of his own belief in himself. When everything he had worked for seemed to be unraveling, Moses questioned his worth, his calling, and his ability to fulfill the mission he had been given. The very identity he had built around being the leader of the Israelites was shaken. This crisis forced Moses to confront the human vulnerability that lay beneath his role as a leader, a vulnerability that he had to acknowledge in order to continue forward. Another powerful example of the moment of crisis can be seen in the story of Jonah. Jonah was called by God to go to the city of Nineveh and warn its people of impending destruction due to their wickedness. However, Jonah feared failure. He didn't believe the people of Nineveh would listen to him, and he didn't want to face the possibility that he would be rejected or ridiculed. In his fear and despair, Jonah tried to flee from his mission, boarding a ship bound for a distant land. But Jonah's attempt to escape his calling led to a storm that threatened the lives of everyone aboard the ship. In this moment of crisis, Jonah was forced to confront the consequences of his attempted escape and his self-doubt. After being thrown overboard, Jonah was swallowed by a great fish and spent 3 days and nights in its belly. This experience was a profound crisis for Jonah, as he was forced to confront his fear of failure and his inability to escape from God's call. In the belly of the fish, Jonah came to terms with his mission and his fears of inadequacy. He had to face the fact that he could not escape the task given to him, and that the failure he feared was simply part of the journey. Jonah's moment of crisis was marked by self-reflection and surrender, where he ultimately accepted his mission, knowing that he could not avoid it. The moments of doubt, fear, and crisis that Moses and Jonah faced are universal to the experience of the chosen one. These figures, like all those chosen for a greater purpose, were faced with moments when everything they had worked for seemed to fall apart. They were forced to confront the very real possibility that they might fail, that they might not live up to the expectations placed upon them, and that their mission might ultimately be in vain. The emotional and psychological toll of these crises is profound. The chosen one is no longer just facing external obstacles, but is also forced to confront their own self-doubt, fear, and lack of control. These moments of crisis are the testing grounds for the chosen one. They are the moments when their true character and faith are revealed, and how they respond to the crisis will ultimately define the rest of their journey. In the face of crisis, the chosen one is asked to rise above their fears and doubts, to move forward despite the overwhelming uncertainty. The crisis forces them to reassess their mission, their identity, and their purpose. It is a moment of refinement, a moment when the chosen one must strip away their ego, confront their vulnerabilities, and decide whether to continue the journey or turn back. The moment of crisis is a critical turning point, and how the chosen one handles it will shape the future of their mission and their legacy. Having explored the moment of crisis, the point where everything falls apart for the chosen one, it is crucial to now delve into the emotional and spiritual fallout that follows. The collapse of the chosen one's mission often leaves behind a trail of profound grief, self-doubt, and a loss of direction. These moments of crisis do not simply bring about immediate setbacks. They also lead to deep emotional pain and the questioning of the very foundation upon which the chosen one has built their sense of purpose. The emotional toll can be devastating, as the weight of failure, the unfulfilled promises, and the shattered expectations begin to sink in. The chosen one often finds themselves not just confronting the loss of their mission, but also struggling with their own sense of identity and worth. When the chosen one faces failure, whether due to personal mistakes, betrayal, or unforeseen circumstances, they often experience overwhelming feelings of grief. Grief is not just about the loss of a task or goal, it's about the loss of self-belief. The chosen one's mission is often deeply intertwined with who they are as a person. If that mission fails, it can feel like their identity has been lost along with it. The sense of personal failure can be far more profound than the loss of an achievement. It can lead them to question their own value, their ability to make meaningful contributions, and their worth in the eyes of those they serve. Moreover, the grief felt by the chosen one often evolves into a profound spiritual crisis. They may begin to question the purpose of their calling, the very nature of the mission they have been given. Doubts creep in as they wonder if they were ever truly chosen at all, or if they were simply misguided by their own desires or illusions. This spiritual crisis often involves a re-evaluation of their faith, and at its worst, the chosen one may begin to doubt the very foundation of their beliefs. If they have placed their trust in a higher power or divine plan, they may begin to wonder whether this plan is truly for them, or if they were simply abandoned when they needed guidance the most. The emotional fallout is compounded by the sense of betrayal and disillusionment. When things fall apart for the chosen one, they often find themselves alone in their pain. The very people they were meant to protect, lead, or serve may turn on them, fail to understand them, or leave them in their darkest hour. This abandonment or lack of empathy can deepen the emotional wounds, as the chosen one realizes that they must now face the aftermath of their failed mission alone. The sense of being misunderstood, unsupported, or even rejected by those they sought to help is a painful aspect of this journey. One of the most poignant examples of the emotional and spiritual fallout can be found in the story of Job in the Old Testament. Job, a righteous man who had been blessed with wealth, health, and a large family, experienced a complete collapse of his life. In an instant, he lost everything: his wealth, his health, and his children. Job's entire world fell apart, and the grief he felt was overwhelming. However, the loss of material things was only the surface of his suffering. Job's greatest pain came from the fact that he could not understand why such tragedy had befallen him. He had lived a life devoted to God, and yet he was struck with unimaginable loss. As Job wrestled with the loss of everything dear to him, his emotional toll deepened. He cried out in agony and despair, questioning why he had been chosen to endure such suffering. He asked why he was being punished when he had always followed God's commandments. In his sorrow, Job wondered if he had done something wrong to deserve such a fate, even though he had always acted with righteousness. His inner turmoil led him to question his very identity as a faithful servant of God. Was he truly chosen? Was he really worthy of God's favour? These are the kinds of questions that can spiral into a spiritual crisis, where the individual is forced to confront the seeming absence of meaning in their suffering. In Job's case, his crisis was compounded by his friends, who came to visit him but instead of offering comfort, accused him of hidden sins. They suggested that Job's suffering was a result of his own wrongdoing, further deepening his sense of betrayal and isolation. Job, overwhelmed by grief, responded by questioning God's plan for his life. He was no longer sure of the divine purpose behind his suffering, and his faith was severely tested. His spiritual crisis was not just a struggle with his own understanding of God's plan. It was a deep loss of faith in the sense that he could no longer see the larger purpose in his suffering. It was as if the entire foundation of his beliefs had been shaken to the core. How could a righteous man suffer so greatly? Why had God allowed such tragedy to occur in his life? Job's emotional pain was not simply a reaction to the loss of his material possessions. It was the existential crisis he faced as he tried to understand the meaning of his suffering. He began to question his very worthiness as a faithful servant of God. His deep self-doubt led him to wonder whether he was indeed chosen, or whether his suffering was a result of some unknown fault or sin. This is the core of the spiritual fallout that many chosen ones experience when their missions fail or their world falls apart. The emotional grief is coupled with spiritual uncertainty, and the person must grapple with whether their faith in their calling and purpose has been misplaced. As Job's story progresses, we see that the emotional and spiritual fallout does not have an easy resolution. Job does not immediately find answers, and his crisis of faith persists for a long period. The pain he experiences is deep, and there is no quick or simple explanation for why he suffers. But the process of grappling with this pain and questioning his beliefs ultimately becomes an important part of Job's journey. God does answer Job, not in the way Job expected, but through a revelation of the divine mystery that lies beyond human comprehension. Job's story is ultimately one of restoration, as his fortunes are renewed, but the real transformation lies in his ability to endure the suffering and come to terms with the deeper questions of faith, identity, and divine purpose. For the chosen one, the emotional and spiritual fallout is a crucial part of their journey. It is through this painful process that they are tested and refined. The chosen one must come to terms with their own humanity, understanding that failure, grief, and doubt are part of the experience. These moments of crisis, while devastating, are also opportunities for growth. The emotional toll forces them to question their beliefs, but it also provides the chance to emerge stronger, more self-aware, and more attuned to the deeper purpose of their mission. As the chosen one navigates their own emotional and spiritual fallout, they must confront the loss of control, the feelings of inadequacy, and the questioning of their purpose. This is a journey not just of external struggle, but of internal transformation. It is through these moments of intense emotional pain and spiritual questioning that the chosen one can ultimately find redemption and renewal. Their path may be marked by doubt and suffering, but it is also shaped by their ability to endure and rise above these challenges, finding new strength and purpose in the process. After the emotional and spiritual fallout that comes with a crisis, the chosen one faces yet another critical phase in their journey, the journey of self-reflection. This period follows the turmoil of failure and the overwhelming doubts that arise when everything falls apart. The self-reflection that the chosen one must undergo is not a passive process. It is an active, often painful journey of introspection, where they confront not only the external forces that led to their downfall, but also the inner struggles that contributed to their failure. This process is essential for growth and transformation, as it allows the chosen one to re-evaluate their identity, their mission, and their place in the world. Self-reflection is a moment of reckoning, where the chosen one must acknowledge their flaws, their weaknesses, and the decisions they made that led them to this point. This is a time when they are forced to look inward, to examine their choices, their actions, and the very essence of who they are. The mistakes that led to failure are not always easy to face, and the chosen one must reconcile their humanity with the high expectations placed upon them. It is a process that requires vulnerability, courage, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. In this time of reflection, the chosen one might question everything: their identity, their calling, and their ability to continue on the path they have been chosen to walk. Doubt is often the dominant emotion during this period. The chosen one may wonder whether they were ever truly chosen, or if they simply misinterpreted the signs that led them to this point. They may question whether they are worthy of the mission at all, or if they were only ever meant to fail. The weight of their failure may lead them to feel like imposters, undeserving of the role they were once destined to fulfill. In these moments of self-doubt, the chosen one's sense of purpose may become unclear, and they may be torn between walking away from their mission or finding the strength to continue. The journey of self-reflection is often marked by a tension between two opposing forces: the desire to give up and the compulsion to continue. The chosen one may feel the urge to abandon the mission, to leave the path they have been given behind, and walk away from the weight of responsibility that has caused them so much pain. Yet, even in their lowest moments, there is often a deeper part of them that still clings to the hope that they are meant for something greater. This inner conflict, the desire to walk away and the compulsion to continue, is a natural part of the self-reflection process. The chosen one must face these contradictions and find a way to reconcile them before they can move forward. One of the most profound examples of the journey of self-reflection can be found in the life of Moses, particularly after his moment of doubt and crisis. As we explored earlier, Moses faced immense pressure throughout his leadership of the Israelites. He was chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt and guide them to the promised land. However, during their journey through the wilderness, Moses faced continual rebellion from the Israelites. Despite the miraculous signs and wonders God performed through him, the people questioned his leadership, complained about their circumstances, and often turned away from God. These constant challenges took a toll on Moses, and he eventually found himself in a moment of deep self-doubt and spiritual crisis. At one point, Moses' frustration and despair reached their peak. He felt completely isolated and overwhelmed by the burden of leadership. The Israelites, whom he had been called to serve and lead, repeatedly rejected him, and Moses began to question whether he was the right person for the task. In Numbers 11:14-15, Moses even pleaded with God, saying, "I cannot carry all these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me. If this is how you are going to treat me, please go ahead and kill me." In this moment, Moses was questioning his worthiness to lead, and the pain of constant rejection caused him to doubt the very calling that had once seemed so clear. The self-reflection Moses underwent in this moment was profound. He was forced to face his limitations and failures, both as a leader and as a person, and he had to wrestle with the very real possibility that he might not be able to continue on his path. In the midst of this deep self-doubt, Moses turned to God for guidance. This act of turning inward, both physically and spiritually, was a pivotal moment in his journey. God responded to Moses' anguish by providing him with the support he needed. God instructed Moses to gather 70 elders to help him bear the burden of leadership, offering him a way forward and a reminder that he was not alone in his mission. Moses, however, had to take the time to reflect on his role and come to terms with the reality of his situation. His moment of self-reflection allowed him to realign with his divine purpose and accept that he could not do everything on his own. The journey of self-reflection helped Moses understand that while he had limitations, he was still chosen for a purpose. Through this process, he was able to regain his strength and resolve to continue leading the Israelites. Moses' story exemplifies the critical role of self-reflection in the journey of the chosen one. Self-reflection is not just about examining mistakes or feeling regret. It is about acknowledging the limitations and challenges that have shaped the individual's journey. It is a time for the chosen one to reconnect with their purpose and find the strength to continue despite the emotional toll. It is through this process of self-examination that the chosen one is able to move beyond failure and grow into the person they need to be to fulfill their mission. The journey of self-reflection is often a turning point in the chosen one's path. It is the moment when they confront their flaws and acknowledge their humanity. This process may involve deep emotional pain as the chosen one faces the reality of their own imperfections. However, it is also a moment of healing as the chosen one comes to terms with their past failures and embraces their true self. Self-reflection offers them the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, to rebuild their confidence, and to reaffirm their calling. It is not an easy process, but it is essential for the chosen one's growth. Ultimately, the journey of self-reflection is about finding the courage to move forward, despite the doubts and fears that have been unearthed. The chosen one may not have all the answers, but through self-reflection, they are able to find the strength to continue, knowing that their mission is still worth pursuing. Moses' journey in particular shows us that even the most trusted leaders and faithful servants of a higher purpose are not immune to self-doubt and crisis. It is how they confront these challenges, how they reflect on their limitations, and how they regain their sense of purpose that truly defines their path. Through this process, the chosen one is not only able to continue their mission, but also to become a stronger, more resilient person, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. As we transition from the journey of self-reflection, the chosen one must now face one of the most difficult decisions in their path: whether to give up or rise from the ashes of their failure. This moment marks a crucial turning point in the chosen one's journey. Having faced the weight of failure, doubt, and disillusionment, they are at a crossroads. Do they allow their failure to define them and walk away from their mission? Or do they find the strength to rebuild and continue the work they were called to complete? The choice is not easy, as it involves a deep emotional process of recovery, renewal, and rebuilding their confidence, faith, and sense of purpose. The rebuilding process is not a simple task. It requires the chosen one to confront the raw emotional pain of their failure and use that experience to forge a stronger, more resilient version of themselves. This journey involves finding new motivation, reconnecting with the core values that once guided them, and most importantly, renewing their commitment to the mission, even when it seems impossible. The chosen one's resilience is tested during this phase. It is a moment where they must look at the destruction caused by their failure, acknowledge the depth of their pain, and decide to rise from it, using the lessons learned to move forward with renewed strength and purpose. It is through the process of rebuilding that the chosen one often finds their true character. They must confront their deepest vulnerabilities and weaknesses, but also tap into their inner strength and the conviction that their mission, despite the failure, still holds value. The rebuilding process involves redefining success and failure, understanding that failure is not the end, but part of the learning and growth required for the greater journey ahead. The chosen one must come to understand that they are not defined by their failures, but by how they rise from them and continue to pursue their purpose. A profound example of rebuilding from the ground up can be found in the life of Jesus Christ, particularly after his crucifixion. Jesus' mission had always been clear: to bring salvation to humanity, to lead them toward redemption, and to fulfill the divine will of his Father. His ministry had gathered followers, performed miracles, and offered teachings of love, compassion, and forgiveness. But his journey culminated in the greatest failure in the eyes of the world, his crucifixion. To those who witnessed his death, it seemed like the end of his mission, the final and irreversible failure of a man who had once been hailed as the Messiah. The very people who had followed him now questioned everything. His death was not just a physical end, it symbolized the collapse of the hopes and dreams of those who had believed in him. However, this was not the end of Jesus' story. The resurrection of Jesus Christ, 3 days after his death, symbolizes much more than just his physical return to life. It represents the renewal of his mission and the restoration of his faith in humanity. The resurrection was not just a miraculous act, but the ultimate rebirth of hope, purpose, and faith, both for Jesus himself and for the world. It was a renewal of his calling, reaffirming that his mission was not in vain, and that the suffering and failure he endured were necessary parts of a greater divine plan. In his resurrection, Jesus rose from the ashes of his failure, not just physically, but spiritually, renewing his commitment to the mission that had brought him to earth. The resurrection of Jesus Christ symbolized his reconnection with his faith and his mission. In the moments following his crucifixion, Jesus had faced the greatest emotional and spiritual crisis: the apparent abandonment of his mission, the defeat of his very purpose. But the resurrection was not just a return to life. It was a powerful act of rebirth. It was a moment of profound healing where Jesus emerged stronger and more committed than ever to the purpose he had been sent to fulfill. It was a rebuilding of his faith in both God's plan and humanity's potential for redemption. Jesus' experience is a profound example of how the chosen one, after enduring the greatest failure, must rebuild from the ground up. Jesus did not simply return to life and continue his work without the pain of his previous experience. The cross was a part of his mission that could not be ignored or forgotten. It was the catalyst for the transformation he needed to undergo. His death was not a failure. It was a necessary sacrifice that, when followed by resurrection, demonstrated the fullness of his calling. Through his resurrection, Jesus not only overcame the physical death, but also transformed the meaning of failure. What seemed like an end was, in fact, the beginning of something far greater than anyone could have imagined. Jesus' ability to rise from the ashes of his apparent failure demonstrates the power of resilience and the necessity of rebuilding in the face of devastation. The rebuilding process is crucial for any chosen one who has faced failure. This phase is not just about bouncing back, it is about transformation, a process that leads to a renewed sense of self and purpose. The chosen one must move beyond the emotional wreckage of their failure, but not by ignoring it. Rather, they must integrate the pain and loss, using it as fuel to become stronger, wiser, and more equipped to fulfill their mission. Failure, in this sense, is not the opposite of success. It is an essential step in the journey of the chosen one. It is through failure that the chosen one gains clarity, strength, and wisdom, and these qualities are necessary for the work ahead. For Jesus, this process of renewal was not an easy one. After his resurrection, he had to appear to his disciples, showing them that he was truly alive, and re-establishing the faith of those who had witnessed his death. His rebirth was a process of reconnection with his followers, reminding them of the divine purpose of his mission. In the same way, the chosen one, in their own journey of rebuilding, must reconnect with the people and the mission they have been called to serve. This process of re-engagement is key in moving forward, as it allows the chosen one to recognize that their purpose is still valid, even after failure. The chosen one's ability to rise from failure is central to their journey. Resilience becomes not just the ability to recover, but the ability to transform failure into a source of power and insight. When everything seems to collapse, the chosen one must make the conscious decision to rise again, to take the pain of their failure and use it to fuel their mission. This renewal is essential for the continued pursuit of their purpose, as it enables them to approach their calling with a deeper understanding of both themselves and the world around them. Ultimately, the journey of rebuilding from the ground up is about finding strength in vulnerability and purpose in pain. The chosen one must come to terms with their limitations and the uncertainty of the path ahead, but in doing so, they gain a renewed sense of direction and a clearer understanding of their mission. Jesus Christ's resurrection serves as a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moments of failure, there is the potential for rebirth and renewal. What once seemed like an end is often the beginning of something far greater. The chosen one, through their rebirth, not only returns to their mission, but transforms it, carrying forward the lessons learned and the strength gained through their trials. This process of rebuilding is not just about returning to what was, it is about creating something new from the ashes of the past. After discussing the rebuilding process, it's clear that the chosen one's journey does not end with failure or despair. The path to fulfilling their mission is often marked by setbacks, pain, and crisis. But it is also through these very challenges that the chosen one finds redemption and growth. It is in the lowest moments of their journey that they discover the most significant transformations, not only in their mission, but within themselves. The lessons learned during their downfall and moments of crisis serve as powerful catalysts for personal and spiritual development.
These experiences shape them into individuals who understand their mission, not just in terms of the task at hand, but with a deeper, more profound perspective. This stage of the journey is about transformation. The chosen one evolves from being someone solely defined by the mission they've been given into someone who has a broader understanding of why they were chosen in the first place. The pain, suffering, and trials they endure are not just obstacles to overcome, but profound opportunities for growth. Through their struggles, the chosen one gains a new perspective on their calling, one that is informed not only by their successes, but also by their failures. This is when they move beyond the surface-level aspects of their mission and begin to see the deeper, often unseen layers of their purpose. They grow not just in their ability to complete the task, but in their understanding of the bigger picture, the divine or larger reason for why they were chosen in the first place. The growth that follows redemption often comes with a refined sense of self and a renewed understanding of their mission. The chosen one has learned that failure and hardship are not markers of defeat, but crucial steps on the road to realizing their true purpose. The lessons they've absorbed through their struggles, the pain they've endured, and the introspection they've undergone serve to deepen their commitment to their mission. They no longer approach their calling with the naivety of someone who believes that success is guaranteed. Instead, they understand that failure is part of the process, that suffering can lead to wisdom, and that their mission is about more than simply achieving an outward goal. It is about personal growth, spiritual resilience, and ultimately, a greater understanding of the forces that have guided them. An illustrative example of the redemption and growth that can follow great suffering can be found in the story of Job from the Old Testament. Job was a righteous man who had been blessed with wealth, health, and a large family. He was a devout follower of God and lived a life of faithfulness. However, Job's world was utterly shattered when he lost everything: his wealth, his health, and his family. He was struck with painful sores and left in a state of deep misery. His friends came to comfort him, but instead accused him of sinning and bringing the punishment upon himself. Job, deeply anguished, wrestled with his faith and questioned why such suffering had been allowed to fall upon him. His faith, once unwavering, now began to waver as he struggled to understand why he, a righteous man, was suffering so profoundly. Job's moment of crisis was not only a physical or emotional blow, but also a spiritual test. He began to question God's plan for his life, feeling abandoned and forsaken. His world had crumbled, and with it, his understanding of the divine purpose he had once trusted so fully. Yet, despite his doubts and the immense pain, Job refused to completely abandon his faith. In his moments of deepest despair, he questioned, but did not lose sight of the bigger picture, that even in his suffering, God's plan had to have some greater meaning. This tension between his suffering and his faith is the core of his spiritual growth during this period. Eventually, Job found himself in a moment of divine revelation. God spoke to Job, asking him a series of questions about the natural world, creation, and the divine mysteries that Job could not possibly understand. These questions, though seemingly rhetorical, were designed to help Job see that his suffering, while incomprehensible, was part of a larger, divine plan that was beyond human understanding. God's response didn't provide Job with direct answers about his suffering, but it gave him a deeper understanding of the nature of faith, purpose, and divine will. Job's growth came not in finding the answers to why he suffered, but in accepting that some answers were beyond him, and that true faith meant trusting in God's plan, even when it was inscrutable. Through this experience, Job's character was refined. He came to understand that his faith in God was not contingent on his personal comfort or success, but was rooted in trust and obedience, even in the midst of suffering. Job did not emerge from his trials with bitterness or regret, but with a renewed sense of humility and faith. His suffering had purified his soul and deepened his spiritual understanding, allowing him to see his mission
and his relationship with God in a new light. Job's story teaches that growth through suffering is not a linear process, but a deep, transformative journey that requires both resilience and humility. Job's eventual restoration, the return of his health, his wealth, and his family, is an important part of the narrative, but it is not the ultimate message of his story. His redemption came not in the restoration of his earthly possessions, but in the transformation of his spirit. His journey led him to a profound understanding of the divine purpose for his life, and in the process, he became a stronger, wiser, and more faithful servant. Job's story shows that even in the deepest suffering, there is the potential for personal growth, spiritual refinement, and redemption. For the chosen one, this story serves as a powerful reminder that failure and suffering are not the end of the journey. Instead, they are essential moments in the process of transformation. The chosen one may feel that their mission is over, that they are unworthy, or that their faith has been shattered. However, through redemption, they are given the chance to grow into a stronger, more resilient version of themselves. Their journey does not end in failure, but in the renewal of their purpose and the deepening of their understanding of their mission. In the same way that Job's suffering brought him closer to God's will, the chosen one's journey of redemption and growth brings them to a more profound understanding of their own calling and the divine forces that guide them. This process of redemption and growth allows the chosen one to emerge from their darkest moments, not as the same person they were before, but as someone who has been refined and transformed. They have learned to see their mission with new eyes, understanding that failure, pain, and struggle are all part of the journey. The chosen one is no longer defined by their failure, but by how they rise above it, how they continue to walk their path with renewed faith, strength, and understanding. This personal transformation is the essence of redemption, as the chosen one is reborn in a deeper connection to their mission and to the larger forces that guide them. Ultimately, the journey of the chosen one is one of transformation, where they move from a place of doubt and failure to one of renewed strength and purpose. Through suffering, they learn resilience. Through loss, they gain understanding. Through failure, they find redemption. And in this journey, they are not only fulfilling their mission, but becoming who they were truly meant to be. A person who understands the depth and meaning of their calling, and who has the strength to continue, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. Throughout this video, we've explored the harrowing journey of the chosen one, when everything seems to fall apart. From the immense burden of responsibility to the illusion of control, and from moments of crisis to emotional and spiritual fallout, the chosen one's journey is fraught with pain, doubt, and despair. But as we've seen, these moments of failure are not the end of the story. They are, in fact, critical moments of transformation. It is in these very moments of collapse and vulnerability that the chosen one has the opportunity to reflect, rebuild, and ultimately grow into a stronger, more resilient individual. The pain they endure and the struggles they face serve as stepping stones on the path to a deeper understanding of their purpose and mission. These crises of faith and doubt are not obstacles to their destiny, but essential parts of their journey that prepare them for what lies ahead. Whether we are the chosen one or not, we all face moments when our world unravels. These moments can feel overwhelming and insurmountable, but they are a universal part of the human experience. Life is filled with challenges, and there will be times when everything we've worked for, everything we've believed in, seems to fall apart. The true test is not in whether we face hardship, but in how we rise after we fall. How do we respond when things seem lost, when hope feels out of reach? The chosen one's journey teaches us that it is in these very moments that we have the potential to grow, to find redemption, and to renew our purpose. It is through the struggles and the failures that we learn to understand ourselves and our purpose on a much deeper level. The chosen one's path is marked by setbacks and challenges, but it is also a story of resilience and renewed strength. It is a reminder that our worth is not determined by our successes alone, but by our ability to rise again after we've fallen. Every failure is an opportunity for growth, and every crisis is a chance for a deeper connection to the mission we are meant to fulfill. We may not always have control over the path we take, but how we respond to the challenges we face is what ultimately shapes us. The chosen one's journey is a profound reminder that, no matter how many times we fall, it is the rise that truly defines us. If you found this video meaningful, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who might resonate with it, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue to explore more powerful, thought-provoking topics together. Remember, no matter how many times we fall, it's the rise that defines us. Thank you for watching.